Hello, I'm Nathalie Dupree. Today on Nathalie Dupree Cooks for Family and Friends, we'll take a trip around the world through the magic of the kitchen. I'll be making out-of-this-world skillet moussaka, zucchini strips with Moroccan spices, a Japanese spinach salad, French bread, and Chinese fortune cookies. I'm just slashing this bread dough that has completely risen for the second time so that it won't collapse. If you let it rise too long, which it's on the verge of, it'll collapse when you cut it. Now I'm using an X-Acto knife rather than a razor blade, which in the kitchen is very dangerous. But you could use a very sharp knife blade or even a scissors if you want to. And then I'll just glaze it now while we're thinking about it. I want to have the white part show, so I'm being very careful not to let the egg dribble into the slashes. And then I'm going to show you all of the steps of this bread that got me to this point, and then show you how to make it. First, this is the dough that has been kneaded, and it will actually bounce back like a baby's bottom when it's kneaded. I'll show you that. Here it goes. See? Just comes right back. This is a dough that has doubled once, and this is a step that can be omitted with the rapid rise yeasts. You can see that if you put 2 fingers into it, they don't bounce back, which is the opposite of that dough. So this dough has been relaxed and has risen. And then this is the dough that has been shaped and doubled yet again. And here it is, baked, and listen, it's crispy on the outside. So let me tell you how to make it. You get 2½ to 3½ cups of bread flour. And then you add a package of the rapid rise yeast, which means you don't have to proof it. Then you add 1½ teaspoons of sugar and a teaspoon of salt and a cup of hot water. And the trick is that hot water really has to be at 120 degrees. And then you want to have your pan glazed with cornmeal. Sprinkled with cornmeal, and then you're going to glaze it with an egg mixed with a tablespoon of water, what I already showed you. Now you have your 2½ cups of bread flour and your yeast and your salt and your sugar in your mixer bowl, and you add your hot water. And if it's not at 120 degrees, it really won't do as nice a job of rising. And you always need a little sugar and a little salt. Now you can do this in a food processor. It takes about a minute, or in here it takes a little longer, like 10 minutes. And you knead it until it gets to a soft dough. Actually, you go back with this guy, put this one on your dough, and it'll pull it up and down and knead it until it gets to this lovely stage that I talked about where it's just so nice and supple, and just like a baby's bottom. I love the feel of this dough. It's just terrific. And then you let it double, as I said, and then now it's time to shape it. I put it in an oil bag, plastic bag. Some people put it in a bowl and oil the bowl and then oil a piece of wax paper and put it on the top. You don't want it to form a crust. That's really it. And then now let me show you how to shape this into loaf. You punch it down, sprinkle your baking sheet with cornmeal, as I said before, and then punch it down and shape it into 2 long loaves. And there are a variety of ways that you can do this. I think the easiest is just to kind of take it and roll it like this and spread it out. But you can also take a rolling pin if you'd like to, and you just put them on your baking sheet and you let them double again. And that could have gone just a little bit more. I could have gotten that a little bit smoother, but I'm sure you'll be perfect at home. Then you preheat your oven to 400 degrees and then slash the tops of the loaves like I showed you with the sharp knife and brush it with the glaze, with the egg and water glaze. And then place a small cake pan of boiling water, and I usually use a metal one, on the bottom rack of the oven, or if you have an oven that has a floor to it as opposed to I have electricity in that oven, then you would just put it on the floor. And if you have baking stones, they are even better, but I have a hard time with them breaking and keeping up with them. But if you have an organized kind of a household, you can go ahead and do that. And I don't have to get it out of the oven, it's right here. Then you place the bread on the middle rack of the oven and bake it 20 to 25 minutes until it's crisp. I know, I wanted to show you what that pan looked like in the oven. I knew there was a reason why I was going over there. See, it's here. What you're trying to do is to get steam coming from the pan that's in there. And it's still a little hot. I'm not going to touch it. But this is just a little cake pan, a pie pan that's in there. And what you want is steam. Some people like the old trick of going back in after a few minutes and spraying the bottom with water from a spray bottle. That works fine if you remember to do it. I always forget, so do whatever. You just bake it till the bottom is nice and hollow when it's tapped. And it's just a lovely bread. Now, the more you dry out your bread and bake it and make sure it's baked all the way, really the better that the bread is. And if it lasts several days, it's just made with water, so if it gets stale on you, then just quick as a flash, run it under the water of your tap, just very, very quickly. That's what you can do with French bread that you buy at the grocery store if it's real French bread. And it'll re-crisp it when you put it into the oven. So now, this is kind of an around-the-world menu. We've got French bread, and now we have moussaka. So what we've got here is 1 medium eggplant. I want to just read you these. 4 tablespoons of flour, a pound of ground lamb, a half a cup of chopped onion, a garlic clove crushed, an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, half a heaping teaspoon of oregano, a 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon. That just gives it a little hidden sweetness. 2 tablespoons of butter, a cup of milk, an egg yolk, a cup of grated Parmesan or Parmesan and Swiss, and then garnish it with 3 heaping tablespoons of rosemary or oregano. It is terrific. It's just a wonderful dish. Now, the first thing that you want to do is to chop your onion and crush your garlic. So let me show you that first. First, cut your onion in half. Peel it. You don't peel it ahead of time. And I always leave the root on. And that's just all is to protect you so you won't cry. This guy's got a real thin skin here. Maybe it's a girl. I don't know really whether it's a guy or a girl onion, but whatever it is, it's got a thin skin. And then cut in. Pretend that I got that last little bit off there. And there we go. And cut into the root. Follow the little lines that nature has ever so conveniently drawn for us. Go across like this. And then down, and voila. Since this is an around-the-world menu, voila, we've got our onion chopped. Now, crush your garlic, take your garlic clove, swack it to peel it. That's how you peel it. And then go back and peel. This will go down in history as the day of the non-peeling onion and garlic, won't it? Now I've smashed it so much and making a mess again. Go and do that. Then go into your root just the same way. Across, or sometimes I just take a little metal spatula and crush it with salt. I like that almost every bit as well, particularly for a recipe like this where you know it's going to need salt. Chop your oregano. This is fresh oregano, and it really does make a difference, but if you've got the dried, you have to use it, go ahead, it'll be fine. Chop your oregano, and then peel your eggplant, and finally, in this world, there are some good peelers. Now, say that and watch. There we go, yay! Peel your eggplant. Although sometimes, frankly, if it's just for the family and I'm in the mood, I will leave the skin right on. Let's go ahead and just cut this. I'll show you how to cut it now. Cut the flesh into 1/2 inch pieces. I think the easiest way is to cut it in half. And then go ahead and cut into it just almost the same way that you did the onion. And then across again. Always keep your hand up high out of the reach of the knife. You see it's resting on top there. And you want to keep your knife level. You don't want to run the risk of having your knife go up to hit your hand. And that's why we cut everything in half, so that we won't be rolling things that are get them candy-whoppered and hurt our hands, my hands, your hands. And then go ahead. You've got your flesh in 1/2 inch pieces. Now, sometimes I salt it and leave it to drain. I didn't do that in that case, but since it's been sitting here about half an hour, it's already lost some of its juices. When you salt it and drain it, it's called dégorgéing it. Now, toss it with 2 tablespoons of flour, and then you put your ground lamb or ground beef and your chopped onion and your garlic clove in a hot pan, and you just cook it, stirring to crumble the meat when it's brown. And then you drain any excess fat and return it to the pan, and then you add the eggplant. And you cook it 4 to 6 minutes until it's just tender. And then you stir in the tomato sauce, which is just terrific. Pretend this is cooked. And your chopped oregano and your cinnamon and your salt and your black pepper. And you simmer that about 5 minutes more. And that's what you come up with, this lovely, tasty, delicious dish. It's really terrific. Now, meanwhile, you melt your flour in a saucepan, and you stir in 2 tablespoons of flour, and you make a roux, which is what this is, and cook it 2 minutes. When you do that, you can actually add boiling milk, or you can add cold milk and bring it back up to the boil. But go ahead and add your milk and bring it back to the boil, and you should stir it the whole time or it'll lump on you. But if you add the cold liquid, but if you add the hot liquid, you can just sort of walk away from it and let it boil. Now, if you want to make a sauce ahead of time, you always can. This one has been made ahead of time, and it's covered with a piece of wax paper so that it doesn't form a skid. You know, it gets cold like you do, and it says help, and so you have that on there so that it'll do better. Then you take here and you temper your egg yolk, which means you add some of your warm sauce to your egg yolk, because an egg yolk won't curdle if you gradually warm it. It won't curdle as easily, I should say. It just prevents it from cooking. So do that, and then add it to your very hot liquid. And then you pour it over your meat and top it with your grated cheese. And I think you're just going to love that. You just cook it until the cheese melts. And then you garnish it with your fresh rosemary or oregano. Let me show you how to do that. I just love this recipe. It's really an everyday kind of a meal. I just find that you can dress this up as well for company. Nobody ever minds being invited for moussaka, so that it's just terrific, and you only get one pan dirty besides your pan for your sauce, so it just makes it all much easier. And do this, top it with your herbs. If you didn't already, there they are. Your salt and pepper. Taste it, it ought to taste real good. And then top it with your cheese. And now, here's something I hope that you'll really enjoy. While at Walt Disney World near Orlando, Florida, I visited the Land Pavilion, part of Epcot Center. And I met Mickey Mouse, who showed me around. Funded by Kraft General Foods, it's an experimental lab for growing the food of the future. It also provides an educational opportunity for visitors. On my harvest tour, I learned that this native of India and China isn't a vegetable at all, though of course we treat it that way. Botanically, the fruit of the eggplant is a fleshy berry. We usually grow eggplants as annuals, but, as Mickey showed me, under ideal conditions of germination, heat, and light, such as those in Disney greenhouses, the plants can live 5 or 6 years. What's more, eggplants produce fruit without pollination from any outside source, and they come in a variety of shapes and colors, from the familiar satiny purple and black to red, white, lavender, and even light green. To control pest mites, which could ruin the leaves and fruit, predator mites are purchased. They're shipped in bran. It looks like sawdust, and it's sprinkled on the leaves. Epcot chef Rick Pestina demonstrated a safe way to peel and slice eggplants. First, remove the stem end. Place the flat side down, then pare the sides, holding the bottom end to steady the fruit.
For nearly a century, LeCreuset's colorful French cookware has been a favorite in kitchens around the world. From its bold finishes and uncompromised quality to its easy-to-clean materials, the brand's range of iconic products are as easy to use as they are to love.
These cookies are just about ready to come out of the oven, and trust me, these are the most wonderful Chinese cookies, fortune cookies you will ever have in your life. I want to show you how to form them around a message. You have to work quickly because they stiffen up very readily. And just write out a message. I've got one here. You just kind of fold it like that, and then fold it again, put it in a muffin cup to shape it and keep it from bouncing back. And just keep moving right along. Here's another one. This says you will inherit a fortune. I mean, who wouldn't like that as a fortune cookie? And then just do the same thing, put it in your muffin cup. Here's a done one. And that's it. Now I'm going to show you, you have to cool them completely before storing, and they store in a Tupperware and they freeze. So they're terrific to have. And let me just, now if you have to bake these ahead of time, you don't, I mean if you have to bake them and you haven't got a chance to fill them, you can run them back in the oven, which is what I did, and they will soften enough for you to shape at a later date. You know, maybe you just couldn't get it all done at one time because it makes a gracious plenty. The ingredients are 5 egg whites, 1 1/2 cups of sugar, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, a cup of unsalted butter that's melted and cooled, a cup of flour, a 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. And then the first thing, that it makes 5 dozen messages. So you have to write out 5 dozen of these or get somebody clever to do it for you on the computer. You know, they can just sort of push about 5 buttons. And I get my son-in-law to do things like that for me. Now let me show you how to crack an egg. You always crack it on a counter and into a bowl. You should always work with 3 bowls if you're working with more than 1 egg. And of course, that's because you want to put the yolk into one so that you can stop and think what you're doing. The temptation is to slide the yolk right in. But all we want is the whites. So go ahead and do this. And then you preheat your oven to 375 and melt your unsalted butter and let it cool just slightly. You put your egg whites in the bowl and you add the sugar and the salt. Let me get the salt in here until the sugar is dissolved. You don't have to whip or anything, but the mixture is really thick and shiny. And then you just gradually beat in the butter. And if the butter is actually separated so that the milk solids are at the bottom, you don't have to add the dregs. You can just leave those out. It's not really crucial to it. And then you stir in the flour. I might could have used a slightly bigger bowl, but take every life a little rain must fall here. And if I make a mess, I have the pleasure of knowing that you all think that I'm going to anyway. So here we go. And don't forget your almond extract. That really gives a bump up to the flavor of this. And just stir it together until it's nice and smooth. And I just happen to have some done here already. Drop it by teaspoonfuls onto a very well greased baking sheet. And I probably have a little bit too much room between each one of these. They do spread out, but I probably could get 6, maybe even 8 on there. But they should be well apart enough that they don't run together. And then you bake them sort of 1 sheet at a time. Or if you have a large enough oven, you can stagger them like that. But you need to, they bake so fast, you have to be careful. Bake 1 sheet at a time for 7 to 8 minutes until the edges are brown. You know, if you put one pan right over the other, that's the reason for that direction, then the bottom ones brown too much on the bottom and the top ones don't brown right. You know, so you have to watch it, or vice versa. So they're just delicious. You're going to love them. Now let me show you about these zucchini strips with Moroccan spices. Just a little of something from every country. I got really bored with like all German meals or all French meals or all Italian meals. I like to kind of mix things around anymore. I don't do it like I used to, where I was rigid about being classic. You know, this has to be German, so it all has to be German. Get about 2 pounds of zucchini and cut them into batons. It's pretty easy to do. I'll show you that over here. Then 6 tablespoons of olive oil, a large onion chopped, 3 garlic cloves chopped, 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground hot pepper, 2 teaspoons of chopped red bell pepper, 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground cumin, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley, 1 to 2 tablespoons of cilantro. You know, people either love cilantro or they hate it, so know your crowd. And 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. So now you trim your zucchini. I cut off that little end there and here. And you cut them into 8 lengthwise batons. So you just do that. And then here you are again. Hardest thing to do is to count. So there we got our 4 from this side. Of course, it just depends so much on the size of the zucchini. Now, you dégorger them. I was talking about dégorging the eggplant. I just wanted to show you these were salted. And then you let it sit about half an hour, and you rinse it and drain it. And then you chop a little red bell pepper, which I'm going to do over here. Here we are. Cut your red bell pepper in half. A told you before, but in case you forgot, this is a green bell pepper that has turned red on the vine. They get a little pricey sometimes of the year, but I love peppers of all varieties and shapes. So here's this. And then you just go ahead now, cut it into little strips like that, and get rid of all your seeds in the white part, and then just chop it on down. Meanwhile, you heat a large skillet and then add your chopped onion. I'll show you how to chop it too. It's cooking over here. It's smelling terrific. But Paul Prudhomme calls the Holy Trinity onion, garlic, and pepper. I kind of agree with him. Cut your onion in half. He's a good friend. And you know what? Paul Prudhomme is every bit as nice in person as he is on the air. He's just a jovial, happy, pleasant person. I've never heard him be cross to anyone. And I've seen lines all the way around. Okay, you add your onion. You cut into the root like this. And then across. And then down. It seems to me I've done this for you a lot lately. Okay, and now your chopped garlic. And it all gets in there cooking together. Now I'm going to add my zucchini right here to the pan. It's drained. It's splattered on me. Be careful of that water. I probably should have dried it off first because you don't need to have it spit on you, you know. It's not a very pleasant sensation. Now, combine your ground hot pepper, your chopped red bell pepper, which is over here. Well, here's theirs. Somebody really chopped this very finely in the back. I don't know if you can see it, but they did a beautiful job. They chopped theirs much more than I did. Your cumin, black pepper, your salt, and just sprinkle it onto the zucchini. This is such an easy, easy dish. You know what? This would be good with grilled Cornish hen, too, or grilled chicken, wouldn't it? And you just toss this, coat it very well, and cook it over low heat until it's tender, 15 to 20 minutes. And then when you're ready for it, you sprinkle it here with parsley and cilantro. Let me show you that they look, how similar they both look. Can you see that? This is the parsley. This is Italian parsley, or curly parsley, and this is cilantro that looks like Italian parsley. They look very similar, and you take them off the root to chop them. But as I said, cilantro, whose seed is called coriander, people either love it or they hate it. They're never ambivalent about it. And then here's lemon that you can just go ahead and juice and add that right like that. It's wonderful. Just heat it through and it's done. You're going to like it a lot. You're also going to love this Japanese spinach salad. Your ingredients are a pound of spinach, and I just want to show you the difference while I think about it between that pound of spinach and this. This is a pound of spinach uncooked, and this is a pound of spinach cooked. An enormous difference, as you can see. You know, it just shrinks up so much. And then 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of white vinegar, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. You could use rice vinegar, too, if you wanted to, by the way. A tablespoon of sugar, and 2 tablespoons of toasted sesame seeds, which I'll show you in a minute, too. Now, you want to wash and stem your fresh spinach, get all those stems off, particularly for this dish. Sometimes I leave them on because I don't actually always object to them. But you have to wash spinach really, really well. Now, you can throw the whole thing in a large quantity of boiling water, bring it back up to the boil and drain it. Or you can heat a big frying pan, and right after you've washed it, just shake off the excess water and throw it in that frying pan, put a lid on it, and cook it a few minutes. It just depends on you, whichever is easier for you. Then you drain it. Let me show you how you squeeze it dry between 2 plates. So there they are. Yeah. I just want you to get a sense of how much more water comes out of it than you ever think, even after it's been drained. See? There we go. I love this trick. I learned this at the Cordon Bleu, too. It's funny how you can learn something that you'll never forget that's simple like that, that makes all the difference in your life. Okay. Now, you squeeze it dry between 2 plates, and then you shape it. And it's going to need a little more squeeze. I didn't give it quite as firm a one. And we could have taken a few more of these stems off here. And you just squeeze it, about 1/4 of it. You want to divide it into 4. So you shape it into mounds on your salad plates. So kind of like if you have long hair and you shampoo it, you can kind of bend it any way you want to. I mean, you could kind of make it have a little funny face like that, or you could make it into a beautiful, perfect triangle. It would really be up to you. Just have some fun with it. Now, you mix together your soy sauce, your white vinegar, your oil, and your sugar. Once again, you can cut back on that sugar if you want to. A lot of people seem to want to, and it's fine. And then you sprinkle it. You spoon this really over the spinach. Here's a spoon right under my nose. Ooh, doesn't that look good? And it tastes good too. And then you sprinkle it with the toasted sesame seeds. It's so different. You can use it as a starter if you want to, or you can use it as a side dish or whatever, you know, it's just very different. Now let me show you everything all together. I forgot to tell you that you can just put your sesame seeds in a small pan like this and toast them on top of the oven, or you can actually, I mean on the stove top, or you can run them right into a toaster oven. I hope you've enjoyed our culinary tour as much as I have, because we have a Greek out-of-this-world skillet moussaka. We have zucchini strips with Moroccan spices, a Japanese spinach salad, French bread, and finally, Chinese fortune cookies, where you can exercise your fortune-telling talents. Try your own version of the United Nations one night soon.